The night Amara was born, nobody celebrated. There were no drums, no dancing, no joyful singing outside the little village hut. Instead, the entire village of Nambara fell strangely silent. Inside a small mud brick room, a young woman named Nia lay exhausted after giving birth. She looked at the tiny baby in her arms. For a moment she smiled, but then the midwife pulled back the blanket, and her smile disappeared. The baby girl was alive. She was breathing normally. Her tiny fingers were moving, but her body was covered with unusually thick dark hair. The midwife stared at the child in shock. She took one step backward, then another. "What is this?" she whispered. Nia immediately pulled the baby against her chest. "She is my daughter." The midwife shook her head. "You don't understand. The villagers will never accept her." Nia looked down at the baby. The little girl opened her eyes, and somehow, despite everything that had happened, Nia smiled. "Then I will love her enough for the whole village." Outside the hut, people had already begun whispering.
But
Something strange had happened, something frightening, something they didn't understand. By sunrise, everyone in Nambara had heard about the baby. Some said she was cursed. Others said an evil spirit had entered the village. Some even claimed that Nia had done something terrible before the child's birth. But Nia refused to listen. She gave her daughter a name, Amara, a name that meant grace. And from that day forward, Nia promised herself that no matter what the world said about her daughter, she would never allow Amara to believe she was less than anyone else. But Nia knew something that nobody in the village knew. The strange appearance of the baby was not a curse, and the truth about her birth would remain hidden for 16 years. Amara grew up inside that small village. When she was very young, she didn't understand why people stared at her. She didn't understand why some women pulled their children away whenever she walked past. She didn't understand why other children laughed at her. To Amara, she was simply a little girl. She loved flowers. She loved birds. She loved sitting beside her mother while Naya cooked dinner. And more than anything, she loved listening to stories. But the older she became, the more she understood that she looked different. One afternoon, when Amara was about 7 years old, she walked through the village carrying a small basket. A group of children noticed her. One boy pointed at her. "Look, the monster is coming!" The children laughed. Another child shouted, "Don't let her touch you!" Amara stopped walking. Her little hands tightened around the basket. She looked at the children. Then she looked down at herself. She didn't understand what was wrong with her. She ran home. The moment she entered the house, she dropped the basket and began crying. Nia rushed toward her. "What happened?" Amara looked up at her mother. "Why don't I look like everyone else?" Nia knelt beside her. She wiped the tears from Amara's face. "Because you were never meant to be like everyone else." "But they call me a monster." Nia pulled her into her arms. "People are afraid of things they don't understand." Amara buried her face against her mother's chest. Then she asked the question that broke Nia's heart. "Am I really a monster?" Nia held her tighter. "No, my child." She kissed her forehead. "You are my daughter." Then Nia whispered something that Amara would remember for the rest of her life. "One day, you will understand why you were born this way." Years passed. Amara became a beautiful young woman. She was intelligent, kind, and hardworking. She helped her mother sell vegetables in the village market. She carried water for elderly neighbors. Whenever she found a hungry child, she shared whatever food she had. But despite everything she did, the villagers continued to call her the monster girl. Amara learned to ignore them. At least, that was what she told herself. But every night, when she was alone, she wondered the same thing. Why was she different? Why had she been born this way? And most importantly, who was her real father? Who was her real mother? One evening when Amara was 16, she finally decided she could no longer live with unanswered questions. Her mother was preparing dinner when Amara walked into the room. "Mama, I need to ask you something." Nia looked at her. "What is it?" Amara took a deep breath. "You always told me that one day I would understand why I was born different." Nia stopped stirring the food. Amara continued. "I think that day has come." For several seconds, Nia said nothing. Then she slowly placed the spoon on the table. Her eyes filled with tears. "Amara, I want the truth." Nia looked away. "I was afraid this day would come. What happened the night I was born?" Nia's hands began to tremble. Before she could answer, she suddenly collapsed. Amara screamed. She rushed to her mother's side. The village healer was called. For several days, Nia remained weak. Amara refused to leave her side. Then, one night, when everyone else was asleep, Nia quietly called her daughter. "Amara." Amara opened her eyes. "I'm here, Mama." Nia pointed beneath the bed. "There is something there." Amara looked underneath the old wooden bed. She found a small wooden box covered in dust. She carried it to her mother. Nia reached beneath her pillow and pulled out a tiny key. She placed it in Amara's hand. "I prayed you would never need this." Amara opened the box. Inside were 3 things: an old photograph, a hospital bracelet, and a folded letter. Amara picked up the photograph first. It showed a much younger Nia standing outside an old medical clinic. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood another woman. The woman was holding a newborn baby. Amara stared at the photograph. Then she looked at her mother. "Mama?" Her voice began to shake. "Who is this woman?" Nia closed her eyes. Then she whispered the words Amara had never expected to hear. "I am your mother." Amara looked confused. "I know." Nia shook her head. I raised you. I love you. But I am not the woman who gave birth to you." Amara froze. The room suddenly felt silent. "What?" Nia began to cry. "Your biological mother's name was Layla." Amara stared at the photograph. "Where is she?" Nia looked down. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I searched for her for years." Amara picked up the letter. "Then what's this?" Nia didn't answer. Amara slowly opened it. The handwriting was old, but the words were clear. "If you are reading this, then you must be Amara." Her hands began to shake. "I am sorry I left you. I was young. I was afraid, but I never stopped looking for you." Amara's eyes filled with tears. At the bottom of the letter was an address, and beneath the address was one name, Layla. Amara looked at her mother. "She's alive?" Nia nodded slowly. "I believe she is." The next morning, Amara left Nambara. She carried the photograph, she carried the letter, and she carried the hospital bracelet that had been placed around her wrist on the night she was born. She walked for hours. She crossed the forest. She passed small farms. She followed the old road described in the letter. Finally, she reached a small settlement far beyond Nambara. There was an old medical clinic at the edge of the road. An elderly doctor was sitting outside. Amara walked toward him. She showed him the photograph. The moment he saw it, his face changed. "Where did you get this?" "My mother gave it to me." The old doctor stared at Amara. He looked at her face, then at her arms, then back at the photograph. His eyes became wet. "I thought you would come one day." Amara's heart began beating faster. "You know my mother?" The doctor nodded. "I knew Layla." "Where is she?" The old doctor pointed across the road. "That house." Amara turned. There was a small, weathered house standing beneath a large tree. Her hands began to tremble. She walked toward it. Every step felt heavier than the one before. She stopped at the door. She raised her hand and knocked. Nothing happened. She knocked again. This time she heard footsteps. The door slowly opened. An older woman stood there. Her hair was beginning to turn grey. Her face was tired, but there was something familiar about her eyes. The woman stared at Amara. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the woman's hand flew to her mouth. "Amara?" Amara couldn't move. The woman began crying. "My baby." Amara finally found her voice. "You know who I am?" The woman nodded. "I have known your face for 16 years. Amara's eyes filled with tears. "Then why did you leave me?" Layla looked down. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of the world." Layla slowly rolled up her sleeve. Her arm had the same unusual hair. Amara stared at it. Layla whispered, "Your father had it too." Amara stepped closer. "You knew I would look like this?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Layla's tears began falling. "Because I was young. I had no money. I had no family who would protect us. And when the villagers saw you, they called you a monster." Amara looked away. "They still do." Layla closed her eyes. "I know." "You knew?" "I have watched you." Amara turned back toward her. "What?" Layla took a trembling breath. "I came back to Nambara many times." Amara stared at her. "The day you helped the old woman carry water, I was there. The day you gave your food to that little boy, I saw you. The day those children called you a monster," Layla's voice broke, "I was standing behind a tree." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "You were there." Layla nodded. "Then why didn't you come to me?" Layla couldn't answer. She simply cried. Finally she whispered, "Because I thought disappearing would protect you." Amara shook her head. "It didn't." Layla looked at her. "It made me believe that nobody wanted me." Those words destroyed Layla. She stepped forward and hugged her daughter. Amara stood still for a moment. Then she finally wrapped her arms around her biological mother. For the first time in 16 years, she felt like she was looking at someone who understood exactly what it meant to be different. But there was still one question left. What exactly happened the night I was born? Layla sat down and told her the truth. The condition Amara had was not a curse. It was not witchcraft. It was not the work of an evil spirit. It was a rare inherited medical condition that could cause excessive hair growth. Layla's father had it. Members of the family before him had it. And Amara had inherited it. The doctors at the clinic had known the truth from the beginning. But the villagers didn't. And when Layla saw how people reacted to her baby, she became terrified. She believed that if she stayed, Amara would grow up surrounded by hatred. So she left her daughter with Nia, the woman she trusted most. Nia had promised to protect the child, and she kept that promise. For 16 years, Amara finally understood. The woman she had called Mama had chosen her, and the woman who gave birth to her had spent 16 years regretting that she couldn't stay. Two mothers, two different choices, but both had loved her. Amara returned to Nambara with Layla. When they entered the village, people immediately began whispering. The same villagers who had stared at Amara for years now stared at the older woman beside her. The village elder walked toward them. "Who is this?" Amara stood tall. For 16 years, she had lowered her head whenever people looked at her. Not anymore. "This is Layla." The elder looked confused. Amara continued, "She is my biological mother." The village became silent. Then the old doctor arrived. He carried medical records from the clinic. He explained everything. There was no curse, no monster, no evil spirit, just a rare inherited condition that had been misunderstood for years. The villagers looked at one another. Suddenly, the things they had believed for 16 years began to fall apart. One man stepped forward. then another. Finally, a woman who had once refused to let her children play with Amara approached her. "We were wrong." Another villager whispered, "We didn't understand." Then Kofi stepped forward. He had been one of the children who used to mock Amara. He lowered his head. "I'm sorry." Amara looked at him. He continued, "I was a child, but that doesn't excuse what I did." Amara didn't say anything. Then the village elder approached. He looked directly into her eyes. "We judged you because you were different." He bowed his head. "We were afraid of something we did not understand." Amara took a deep breath. Then she said something that nobody expected. "I don't need you to feel sorry for me." The villagers looked at her. "I only needed you to see me as a person." Nobody spoke. Then an elderly woman walked forward and hugged Amara. Another followed, then another. For the first time in her life, Amara stood in the middle of the village without hiding her face, without covering her arms, without trying to look like someone else. She was simply Amara. That evening, she returned home to Nia. Her mother was still weak, but she smiled when she saw her daughter. "Did you find her?" Amara nodded. "Yes." Nia smiled. "Then you finally know the truth." Amara sat beside her. She held Nia's hand. "You were always my mother." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't give birth to you." Amara shook her head. "No," she smiled. "But you chose me." Nia began crying. Amara hugged her, and for the first time she understood what Nia had meant all those years ago. A mother wasn't only the woman who gave birth to a child. Sometimes a mother was the woman who stayed, the woman who protected you, the woman who loved you when everyone else turned away. Years passed. Amara never forgot what happened in Nambara. Instead, she used her experience to help others. She became a teacher, and eventually, she opened a small school in the village. Children from poor families came there, children who looked different, children who were bullied, children who had been told they weren't good enough. Amara welcomed every one of them. Above the classroom door, she placed a simple sentence: "Never call someone a monster because you don't understand them." Whenever children asked about her unusual appearance, she never hid. She simply smiled. "This is part of my story." Then she would point toward her heart. "But it is not what makes me who I am." And slowly, the village changed. The same people who once feared Amara began respecting her. The same children who once laughed at her now sat in her classroom. And the girl everyone once called a monster became one of the most loved people in Nambara. But Amara never forgot the 16 years when she believed something was wrong with her, because those years taught her something important. People often fear what they don't understand, and sometimes they hurt innocent people simply because they are different. But being different is not the same as being broken. Amara had never been a monster. She had never been cursed. She had never been something to fear. She was simply a girl born different in a world that was too quick to judge her, and the truth about her birth didn't change who she was. It simply showed everyone else who they had been. So if you ever meet someone who looks different, someone who speaks differently, someone whose life doesn't look like yours, don't be too quick to judge them, because you may only be seeing the part of their story that the world misunderstood. And sometimes, behind the person everyone calls strange, there is someone carrying a story of courage, pain, and love that you could never imagine. Amara spent 16 years being called a monster, but in the end, she proved something that her mother had known from the very beginning. She was never the monster. The real monster was the fear, the judgment, and the refusal to understand. And when the truth finally came out, the girl everyone had tried to hide became the woman everyone was proud to know.